Bitcoin is 100 blocks away from halving, and the price recovers $66,000.
I am extremely confident. I have a very high degree of confidence that the risk reward of buying Bitcoin here it's a tremendous value. And so I know that if I believe that Bitcoin will be $1 million someday soon, whether it's in 2030 or 2035, just on fair value, I know that the market's discounting that to somewhere around a 94% probability that it's going down to zero versus a 5 or 6% probability that it's going to $1 million.
Happy 2024 Bitcoin Halving Day, the much anticipated event that would see Bitcoin's block rewards halved from 6.25 Bitcoin to 3.125 Bitcoin. The moment we've been awaiting is nearly upon us, and it promises to be as exciting as we imagined. There was a little bit of disturbance earlier as Bitcoin slipped below $60,000 for the first time since late February. Other cryptocurrencies, including Ethereum and Solana, also took a hit, but prices are stabilizing again in preparation for the much-anticipated event, though there has been much criticism, including warnings from two of the world's most prominent investment banking giants, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. Crypto experts believe this halving will have as much impact, if not more, than previous halving events. According to Goldman Sachs, macro and geopolitical conditions today are most unstable compared to previous halvings. As such, the banking giant warns investors not to expect significant post-halving rallies for Bitcoin. However, anonymous Bitcoin analyst Plan B says this halving will be no different. One of his recent posts on the topic reads, "In my opinion, this Bitcoin halving will not be different. All Bitcoin price increases will again be around the halving. Buying 6 months before the halving and selling 18 months after the halving will outperform buy and hold. Bitcoin will be above $100,000 in 2024 and above $300,000 at the top in 2025. In another post, the former institutional investor writes happy Bitcoin halving and stock to flow doubling in the 6 months before the halving. Insiders front run it and price does 2x. In the 6 months after the halving, miners revenue adjusts and price does 2x 6 to 18 months. After the halving, the rest of the market rushes to get a piece of the pie and price does 4x. Reformed hedge fund manager and author of the information this newsletter, James Lavish, is as bullish as Plan B on the Bitcoin halving and how much impact it will have on Bitcoin prices within the next few months. During a recent interview with Kitco News, James shares his short and long-term price outlook for Bitcoin, predicting that the leading cryptocurrency will hit $100,000 in 2024 and $1 million within the next decade. James does not share Goldman Sachs has concerns about the macro environment and heightening geopolitical tensions. Instead, he believes these factors will push Bitcoin prices even higher.
Well, what I expect is we have a number of different factors that are going on. Okay, so the first factor we have going on is that we just had these ETFs approved. There have been billions of dollars come into these ETFs, hundreds of millions almost every single day since the since the approval and the trading of these ETFs. They're significant for the people who don't know, who are watching. They're so significant because these are spot-based ETFs, which mean they legally must own the same amount of Bitcoin to the underlying NAV value. So if somebody puts in $1 into that ETF, they have to make sure that there's at least $1 worth of Bitcoin in that ETF to match it, right? So that's why it's so significant. It's not like a future where it's just cash settled. It's just really just a bet on price. These are actually, they have to own the underlying. And so what we're seeing is, and I was one of the people who was a little bit more optimistic and enthusiastic about when these were approved, that we would have a rush of institutions into the space. The reality is, and I understand this, being in the space for a long time, that it takes weeks and months for these banks and for these institutions to create the on-ramps onto the superhighway. So the superhighway is built. It's easy to buy. And now they have to build those on-ramps.
James believes this halving event and the overall crypto bull market will be even more impactful on crypto asset prices than previous cycles because of the recently approved spot Bitcoin ETFs, which are as we speak, giving tens of thousands of institutional investors access to the leading cryptocurrency for the first time in 15 years. In more posts and comments shared on social media platform X, Plan B speaks further about the halving and the overall bull market. In one of his posts, someone predicted that Bitcoin would surpass gold's market cap this cycle. Here's Plan B's response. Agree, Bitcoin must take out gold because it will have to X scarcity / stock to flow. My Bitcoin top of over $300,000 is the low end of the $250,000 to $1 million range. Last cycle, I took the high end and Bitcoin decided to go low end. Let's see how this will work out. In another post, Plan B points out that nothing will happen for days after the halving, but significant price gains will take months. The post reads, nothing will happen in 2 days. We already had a nice little price increase from $34,000 October 2023, closed 6 months before the halving to $62,000 now, almost 2x in my opinion. We will have another 2x in the 6 to 10 months after the halving, then another 2x to 4x face melting FOMO top. Let's return to James's interview where he discusses his expectations for Bitcoin amidst rising geopolitical tensions.
First of all, Bitcoin has had a tremendous run this year, right? So it's just taking a breather. I actually look at it as very healthy that it's consolidating here. You know, you have a lot of old OGs, you know, original Bitcoiners that have these wallets that are suddenly being activated that haven't been active in 5, 6, 7 years. The Bitcoin ecosystem stretches across the entire world. And so that is what protects it from bad actors and change in the code. And so, but it's going to take time for people to understand that, especially in the institutional space. And once they do, then it'll move from being a risk on asset to becoming a risk off asset. And when that happens, you're going to see Bitcoin not just take a little bit of market share from gold, but and I don't think it's going to demonetize gold completely, at least not for a while. But once it does do that, you'll start seeing people allocate out of their long bond portfolios into Bitcoin. Because why on earth would you be invested in a 30-year treasury that's yielding 5% when you know that the expansion of the money supply is over 7% for the last 50 years? Why would you do that? It makes absolutely no sense. So eventually you'll come to that realization and you'll know that Bitcoin is a much better store of value than a long bond, even the US Treasury.